everyone, in this video I wanted to go through how I like to stitch in hand when I cross stitch. I alternate between stitching in a hoop or a scroll frame and stitching in hand depending on the project. I'm working on something that's relatively small, and sometimes I'll choose to work on something in hand when it's a smaller size, or if I want to stitch in hand, which is a little bit quicker. So stitching in hand, I think, looks a little bit not as neat all the time. The stitches won't always lay as neatly as if you're railroading and you're stabbing the fabric instead of sewing, but it does allow you to speed things up, and I think it's a little bit more meditative because you can really get in the flow of things. So that is why I choose to do this sometimes. So this is just how I like to use the sewing method and stitch in hand. There's probably plenty of other techniques, but this is just how I've found to do it. So I'll roll up the side of my fabric, and then I'll keep the fabric wedged between my forefinger and my thumb usually. And then on the back here, I'll either use my ring finger or my middle finger to kind of feel where my needle is going and help to guide it. Because I'm using a tapestry needle, so it's less likely I'm gonna stab myself with it. So first I'll show you how I stitch horizontally, and then I'll show you how I stitch vertically. I like to stitch things where I'll do a half stitch and then go back through to do the full stitch, because I think it's just a little bit more intuitive movement wise when you're doing the sewing method. So what I'll do is come up through the fabric, and then you just grab your needle through the bottom to top hole here if you're taking it, if you want to make a backslash, basically half stitch. And then you'll just continue doing that. So you're basically making a vertical stitch with your needle, and then you're just going back down and pulling the thread through. And then when you want to turn around, you'll just go back up like this, and then you'll go the other way. So you'll start back towards the left, and you just continue on. And I'm kind of feeling the stitch with one of my fingers on the back of the fabric to kind of help articulate it and also feel what I'm doing. So to make vertical stitches, here is one way you can do that. So you can go up through the fabric, and then you'll just grab the fabric horizontally this time through the base of the two holes of the stitch you want to go through. And again, I just work down like this to make my half stitches, as many as I need. So I need 4, so I'll just do this and then grab the fabric, and then I'll go back up the same way, like this. This isn't always the most, like, you don't have to be super prescriptive about how you're stitching. If you need to travel to a different space, you can travel a needle a little bit, but generally I like to try and stick with, you know, a small area to work in, to go either work vertically or horizontally when I'm working this way, because I find that I get a little bit confused if I deviate too far away from the spot that I'm working. But I do like using this method when I've got something like this project. I think it's just speeding it up so much more, and I don't really mind. The stitches are a little bit more raised. They're not as flat looking when you stitch this way, but I don't really mind that. I'm not super meticulous about the way my cross stitches look usually, so I prefer to sometimes use this method over just doing the stabbing method using a hoop. If it was a larger project, I'd probably use a hoop or a scroll frame, but this is going to be a design that's about this big, so that is why I'm using this method. I did also want to note that I kind of flip between stabbing and sewing. I don't usually only do one or the other. It's generally just what feels the most natural and how I'm navigating the pattern, because there's going to be points where you may not be able to just sew the fabric to get to where you need to go, and that's where mixing it up can come in handy. But you can also flip your work around if you feel like you're working in the opposite direction that feels natural for you. There are some people out there that will use the sewing method while they're using like some sort of frame or hoop. I personally feel like it's really hard for me to manipulate the needle through the fabric that way, which is why I recommend trying to stitch in hand if you're going to use the sewing method, but it is possible. You just need to loosen your fabric a little bit. Anyways, I hope that this was helpful. I'm not a pro at the sewing method, but I do find it to be a little bit speedier and a little bit more convenient sometimes. So let me know what your preferred method is, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.